Okay, will the NFL ever take the Super Bowl outside the USA? Now, before, when I've asked this question and done videos on the topic, I've been looking specifically at London. Now, with the international series having grown massively, and with rumours having circulated a couple of years ago that the NFL was actually looking at potentially London as a Super Bowl host city in the future, post 2026, before this current batch of future cities has been announced, because they do it in 3-year batches. They haven't denied the fact, and London hasn't been taken off the table. We just know the Super Bowl cities until 2029. So in the build-up to the announcement of LA, Atlanta and Miami being announced as the next 3 cities post Santa Clara in the Bay Area next year, London was mentioned, and the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium was mentioned as a potential Super Bowl location. But because the international series has grown so massive now, we've got multiple games in London per year. We now have games in Germany, Mexico, Brazil. And with the NFL having a roadmap for international games and what teams will be playing in what countries in the future, the likelihood, I think, has gone up that a Super Bowl at some point will be played outside the US. They've also not ruled out the fact, even though it hasn't happened to this point, of a team based in London or potentially Germany. Now, initially, they wanted a team already to be based and playing out of London over a decade ago. It hasn't happened. I did a video on that back in 2018. And there's a reason for that. 2007, they hosted the first game in London. They wanted a team in London by around between 2008 and 2010. What happened between 2008 and 2010? Oh, yes, the subprime mortgage crisis and the financial crash devastated the global economy and caused a lot of financial difficulty, and a lot of sports did actually lose money or make less profit. A lot of people lost money. The world economy didn't do very well, and there was a massive financial crisis. So the team in London didn't happen. Fast forward to 2018, and the owners of the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Khan family, Saeed and Tony Khan, try and buy Wembley. And they came very close to buying Wembley. It fell apart as time went on. As soon as it was announced they were interested in purchasing Wembley and the FA were willing to sell, the reaction on social media was so 95% of people were against. The 5% of people who were in favour were going, well, it's not worth the money that it was paid for, basically. It wasn't worth the money that was spent on it. And a lot of people don't like the current Wembley Stadium for a variety of reasons, although it does work for American football. Now, the FA were trying to undervalue the stadium, and they wanted to make money quick because they're an asset-rich, cash-poor organisation. But very, very quickly, that idea collapsed. The plan collapsed, and the Khan family withdrew their offer to buy Wembley. They were facing a big backlash for a variety of reasons, including the fact that taxpayer money was involved in building the stadium and financing the stadium to begin with between 2001 and 2007. The then FA chairman subsequently resigned a few years later following different reasons and a different scandal, but he eventually was out of the organisation. That doesn't mean the FA won't try and sell Wembley again, because it's more conducive to own your stadium than be an anchor tenant. It means you control a bit more of your finances and you make more money, basically, rather than you're paying rent to another organisation. Now, the Jacksonville Jaguars are the most likely team, if there is a relocation, to potentially move to London. Although they have stated they are committed to the Jacksonville area and they are investing heavily in the Jacksonville downtown where the stadium is. Now, and building an entertainment district. The London series has now grown. The international series has grown as a result as well, and we now have 2 stadiums in London that host games in the same season, which is Wembley and the new Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Now, when Tottenham Hotspur were having this new stadium, well, the old White Hart Lane, rotated 90 degrees and rebuilt into the new stadium we see today, they were playing at Wembley, which meant the NFL could not play at Wembley, so they had to go to Twickenham for a couple of years. So Twickenham, the home of rugby union, has also hosted NFL regular season games, which leaves 2 other major stadiums in London that are potentially capable of hosting NFL regular season games and or Super Bowl, the Emirates and the London Olympic Stadium, as yet unused. However, the Emirates has hosted a Rugby League World Cup semi-final, and the London Olympic Stadium has hosted Major League Baseball International Series games in recent years since 2019. So we've got many multi-sport, multi-purpose facilities in the City of London. The fact they're also going to Munich and Frankfurt, Germany, again, the stadiums in Germany are fantastic, and again, brilliant facilities. Have recently had a lot of upgrades for the recent Euros, and also they were also upgrading for the 2006 World Cup. So the German stadiums, much like the stadiums here in England, in London, are of a really good, high-quality international standard. A lot of money's been spent on stadium infrastructure, so the stadiums are there. We also know there's a lot of fans over here in Europe who are American football fans. There's also a lot of Americans who are currently living and working over here for a variety of industries, including in the military. There's a lot of US military bases over here in Europe, and a big US military presence here in Europe. Now, in the UK alone, I think there's about nearly 300,000 US passport holders, US citizens currently in the UK. Either they've moved here permanently or they're here with the military or with work. 300,000. It's a third of a million, near enough. That's a lot of people. So we know there's a lot of Americans here, and a lot of them are NFL fans. We also know Germany is hosting a fair couple of 100,000 US citizens, and there's a fair few in Portugal, Spain, France, and Italy, and further afield. There's a lot. There's around a couple of million. 2 to 3 million Americans, I think, at last count, over here in Europe. That's quite a lot. And then you look at how, when it comes to our regular sports, like football, rugby union, rugby league, and our own ice hockey leagues, with the international TV deal, start times have been adjusted for the US audience. So you will notice the majority of games here in the UK kick off at 3 o'clock. We have a TV blackout. However, that's 10 a.m. on the East Coast, where the majority of the US population lives on the East Coast, between Boston and Miami. That's the majority of the US. I'm not saying all the US. But then we have the afternoon and evening kickoffs, the 5:45s, the 5:30s, and the 7:45s and 8 p.m s. And they suit not only the East Coast, but the West Coast. So you have a morning to early afternoon game. And the TV viewing figures are backing up the fact that the US sports fan likes these late kickoffs over here, but more like lunchtime, early afternoon kickoffs over there. And they really, really do buy into watching the English Premier League, for example. An 8 p.m. kickoff here is a 3 p.m. kickoff in New York, or a 10 a.m. kickoff in LA. And they're buying in, and they're really enjoying watching at those hours. And as I say, the TV viewership backs it up. And the fact, on top of that, the amount of US sports owners over here in Europe who bought into association football, rugby union, rugby league has now got US owners as well, motorsport, ice hockey, you name it. Any sport you can think of that us Europeans play, there's a US owner in there somewhere. So they're investing heavily not only in our football clubs, or soccer clubs to our North American cousins, but they've invested in our other sports, our other team sports, either through being a minority owner, majority owner, sole owner, investor, sponsor, whatever you can name, there's American money heavily involved. And then you look at the international TV deal and how much the US dollar is worth in regards to those TV deals, it's big. There's a lot going for a potential. Also, places like London or Madrid or Barcelona, they're less likely to get really severe winter weather. And that is what the NFL wants, is they don't want a bad snowstorm to come in and the game gets postponed or delayed. They don't want that. So that's why they're playing in the Sunbelt. They want better conditions. The irony is New Orleans and Atlanta have had heavy snow this winter, and Miami, it's been... The 24 hours of Daytona, the temperatures were 20, 30 degrees Celsius below what they were last year. When they started the race, it was 7 degrees Celsius. It was cold. So even Florida, even southern Florida, has been colder than normal, which has happened before. And parts of northern Florida, it snowed quite a bit. And this is, while it's not unheard of, it is rare. Now, I'm not saying it's going to snow for the Super Bowl. I'm not going to say it's going to snow in 2028 in Atlanta. It could do. It's highly unlikely that that's going to happen on back-to-back years. But London, this time of year, it can be not the warmest, but it's not going to be as cold as Buffalo or Green Bay, which will be like in Celsius, that could be minus 30. Anywhere between like 0 and minus 30 degrees Celsius, and a blizzard, and freezing cold, and not pleasant to play. It could be fun to watch as a neutral, though, watching two teams playing in a blizzard. I've watched a few Buffalo games and a few Green Bay games where that's actually happened. But the NFL doesn't want that for their showpiece event, the Super Bowl. They want the Super Bowl half-time show to really draw in the advertising revenue. And I don't think a Beyonce or any musician artist would particularly want to play in minus 30 degrees Celsius in the snow. I don't think that's going to happen because the halftime shows where they make a lot of advertising revenue. But in saying that, the NFL does want a team in London. They really want a team in London, as I've said before. But what will the American fan base make? Because we've seen some of these sports have made decisions, and much like the attempted sale of Wembley, fan reaction is going to be key. If they say, let's say in 2030, they go, right, we're going to go to London, and we're going to pencil it in, what will fan reaction be? Because the attempted sale of Wembley by the FA to the Jacksonville Jaguars ownership, within a couple of weeks of that being announced, the backlash was so severe, the Khan family pulled out of that potential purchase and they backed away and said it's not a good idea. Because the majority of sports fans in London and in the UK reacted very negatively because of British taxpayer money funded the building of that stadium, or in part. And the reaction was so visceral that they pulled out. It was very negative PR, and it didn't go well. The FA also suffered as a result. There was a lot of negativity and a lot of frustration and anger aimed at the Football Association. So if the NFL is to potentially take a decision, and they haven't said they wouldn't, before LA, Atlanta and Miami were announced last year as the next 3 hosts post-2026, London was one of the cities they were considering as a future host. And there's nothing to say that in a couple of years' time they won't go, 2030 we're playing in London. There is nothing to suggest that they won't go down this route. But it'd be very, very interesting to see how sports fans in the US would feel about taking the Super Bowl, a one-off game, to London or to Paris or to Munich or Berlin or Madrid. I'm just using these, or Rome or Milan, because these are cities that have stadiums that are more than capable of hosting a Super Bowl. These are countries that have hosted World Cups and Euros, have the stadium infrastructure to host a one-off game of a Super Bowl. They have massive stadiums, and the biggest stadiums in the world are in Europe. And they're modern, they've been upgraded, and you're more likely in Europe, especially places like Rome, London, Madrid, for example, to avoid bad winter weather. It will snow occasionally, it will be cold occasionally, but it's not going to be as bad as a huge portion of the US which will never host a Super Bowl. The fact that we keep going to the same cities over and over again in the Sun Belt, some fans are already getting frustrated. There's some fans who know their city will never get a Super Bowl, such as Green Bay or Buffalo. They know New York won't even get a Super Bowl. Baltimore, Boston, they know they're not going to get a Super Bowl because the weather conditions are so bad. And some fans do feel frustrated and annoyed that they don't get a Super Bowl in their city or in their metro area. And some fans get bored of the same cities over and over again being recycled for Super Bowls. So London's not necessarily a bad idea. Madrid, Paris is not necessarily a bad idea because it freshens it up. It's different. I'm not saying they will do it. And I'm not saying they should do it. I'm just listing the positive side of this. The negative side of this is the fans react very angrily. There's fan protests. TV viewership doesn't go the way that the NFL wants, which will then hurt advertising revenue. And advertisers will go, this wasn't a good idea, let's not do this again. Or they're hit with boycotts, Well, the players, the NFLPA would have to sign off, because to have a team move to London, the NFLPA would have to sign off. The NFLPA kicked off about taking games to Mexico and Brazil and raised concerns about the quality of playing surface, player and fan security, quality of facilities. They were very critical of the games in Mexico and the games in Brazil that the NFL have taken over there as part of this international series. They've been more positive about games in London and games in Germany, and the experience. There are still some negatives around how it disrupts preparation, jet lag. They've been more, however, the feedback ex-players give when they go on with media commitments or team commitments as coaches and ambassadors is generally very, very positive. They enjoy the games going over there. And from all accounts, a lot of the ex-players who now go over in the media or with various franchises as part of an ambassadorial role or a coaching role or an admin role also think that a potential Super Bowl in London or Germany would actually be a good thing. They're very positive about the experience. At the same time, Brazil and Mexico, the NFLPA and ex and current players have been very negative about the experience. So be careful what you wish for. I know a lot of NFL fans are not happy with the international series, and they don't want the international series to take place. It's not a universally positive thing across all NFL fans. And as I say, the NFL hoped to have a team in London by now, about a decade ago. That hasn't happened. Will it ever happen? Will the NFLPA sign off on a team in London or somewhere else in Europe? So, if the NFL is to take a Super Bowl to Europe or South America, or Australia, for example, because there's many stadiums in Australia that could easily host a Super Bowl. There's many facilities that are massive stadiums that could host a Super Bowl. The NFLPA is going to have a say, and it's going to be interesting. I think fan reaction will have a massive part to play because it is the championship game. It is the championship game. It's the showpiece game of the NFL's calendar. But other sports have been willing to take risks with taking regular season games and big games overseas. World Cups, various World Cups are taking risks with host countries and final hosts. And so we have seen different sports take different risks when it comes to their international growth and their international pathways. The NFL has been a leader as a league in growing their brand internationally and growing sport internationally since 2007. So we shall see. But what do you guys think? Will the NFL ever take the Super Bowl outside the US? If you are a fan from the USA or from North America, do you think they will? Would you support a Super Bowl? Would you be against a Super Bowl being hosted outside the US? Let's hear what you have to say. But for me, for now, thank you very much for watching. Place your thoughts in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that membership tab if you are interested. And I'll have some more content for you guys and girls very, very soon.